everybody. It's great to be back here again. Tomorrow it's Friday, Parashat Vayechi. We're going to be completing the book of Bereshit, Genesis. This lesson will be in the name of Yehuda Dimatman that was murdered last night, coming back from the Yeshivat Chomesh. And we're all familiar in the way back and with the expulsion of the Jews from Gush Katif by Ariel Sharon in northern Samaria. One of the communities was called Chomesh, right here, not far from here, from Itamar, and about 40-minute drive. And unfortunately, a beautiful, thriving community was dismantled, destroyed, but the spirit of settling the land of Israel didn't stop a group of very, very important pioneers to go back and to continue studying Torah in the community, which was his understanding with the army that they allowed them to go back to study. But the crazy thing is they dismantled all the homes and all that. But anyway, one of the boys that were learning in the yeshiva, a young man of 25 years old, Yehuda, and father of a child, a young couple, he was murdered last night, coming back ambushed near Sebastia, when the terrorists were hiding in the bushes and opened fire on the car he was in. 2 others were injured, one lightly, one moderately. This lesson will be in his memory. You know, sometimes we wonder, we're praying that these terrible tragedies that are here in Israel, terrorism, would just end already, but we still are going through difficult times, and the battle for the land of Israel is far from over. And it's very, very important for everyone to be involved, to wake up and to realize what's going on here in the land, how important it is, our mission in strengthening the land of Israel in all ways. This week's portion doesn't open up with it, but I want to get to a verse where in chapter 49, verse 1, where Yaakov Avinu, he calls his children. He calls his 12 children, his 12 sons. And he says, gather around. Vagida lachem, I will reveal to you what will happen to you at the end of days. Here, Yaakov Avinu wants to reveal to his children what's going to be the end of days. We're in the end of days now. And Rashi says right away, Bikesh legalot et haketz. He wanted to reveal the end. V'nistalka shechina mimenu. But the divine presence left me. He had a prophetic moment when he had a prophecy. Through the prophecy, he was going to reveal to his children what's going to happen at the end of the days, but boom, the divine presence left him. Rashi doesn't bring down in this verse what happened. Why did the divine presence leave Jacob, Yaakov Avinu, when he wanted to reveal the end of time? And if we look, and I'd like to bring down a Talmudic passage from the tractate of Psachim, page 56:1. Vayikra Yaakov el banav vayom yisvu v'gida lechem. Yaakov calls his children. He says, I will tell you what's going to be the end of days. The Talmud brings down this particular Rashi. What Rashi brought down, Rashi quotes the Talmud, but only the beginning of it. Bikesh Yaakov legalot lebanav ketz yamin. He wanted to reveal to his children the end of days. Now, yamin could also, interesting, ketz hayamin could also mean the right. Hayamin, the Talmud has an interesting spelling of the word. Not the word the way it's spelled in the Torah. It talks about acharit hayamin, the end of days. Here, the Talmud uses another expression, ketz hayamin, right? The end of the ketz hayamin, the end of the right. Now, that's interesting. What is ketz hayamin? What does that mean? We'll get to that in a moment. Goes on to say the Talmud, V'nistalka mimenu shechina, and the divine presence left him, as we explained before Rashi, because obviously there was some reason why the divine presence stopped prophesizing Jacob when he wanted to reveal his children the end of days. So the Talmud says, Shema chas v'shalom yesh b'mitati psul. So Jacob was asking himself, why did the divine presence leave me? He was trying to ponder over that difficult happening. Could it be that I have a problem with my children? Now, what does he mean, a problem with his children? Like Abraham had a child, Ishmael, who wasn't part of the house of Israel. So he was pushed out of the house of Israel. So there was an issue. Obviously, it wasn't for Yishmael. He goes on to say, V'avi Yitzchak, sheyetzami menu Esav, or my father Isaac, who Esav came out. So he was also pushed out of the house of Israel. So they were never meant to be part of the house of Israel. So Jacob thought maybe one of the 12 tribes, one of his 12 children, in the same light would not be worthy of being the house of Israel. And therefore, God did not want the secrets that Jacob was ready to reveal to his children to be heard by that particular son. But the Talmud goes on to say, Amulo banav Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. His children began to say, Hear, O Israel, our God, Hashem our God is one. So basically, we see that the children were testifying to Yaakov Avinu, to Jacob, that Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. They were saying that God is one. In other words, that they were totally on the table with their father. They were totally in line with his belief of the one God, monotheism, and not, God forbid, any connection to idol worship. So what did the children say? I'm going to continue the Talmud. Amu kishem she'ein b'libcha el echad. The children said to the father, just like in your heart, Father, you have only one, right? There's only one God in your heart. Kach ein b'libeinu el echad. The same thing in our hearts. There's only one God. We believe only in one God. So now Yaakov realized the reason that the divine presence moved away from him is not because one of the children have a problem. They're all special children. Botasha patach Yaakov v'inu v'amar. At that moment, Jacob opens up and says, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto L'olam. And he says at that moment, Blessed, Baruch Shem, blessed be your name, the name of your Kivod Malchuto, the honor of your kingdom, forever. This is what Jacob says. As we all know, when we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, where we are saying Hashem is one, we say afterwards, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto L'olam. So Jacob, Yaakov Avinu, when he hears his children saying this wonderful thing that they're accepting, the oneness of God, just like their father, and he realizes they're all 100% on board with what monotheism is, or what Judaism is all about. So immediately he says, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam V'ed. He says those words. Amri Rabbanan, the rabbis right away say, Hechi Na'avid. How are we? Now the Talmud, as we all know, it's a halachic work. So the Talmud said, the rabbis of the Talmud are saying, how are we going to do from this account of Yaakov and his children? How are we going to behave? No, if we say ourselves, when we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, if we say Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto L'olam V'ed, if we do that, just the way Jacob did it, well, Moshe Rabbeinu did not say it. Why? Because Moshe Rabbeinu wrote, as we know, where is Shema Yisrael mentioned in the Torah, in the 5 books? It's mentioned in the book of Deuteronomy, Dvarim, in Parashat Vayechi. And in that parasha, Moshe Rabbeinu says it, but doesn't mention Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto L'olam V'ed. Doesn't say that addition. It's not part of the Torah words itself. So what are we going to do? The rabbis ask. Lo no more. We shouldn't say it then? How can we not say it? Jacob said it. So Jacob was one of our forefathers. He said it. How could we not say it? Hitkinu. So therefore they enacted. Shiyomrim oto b'chashai. They should say it quietly, not in a loud voice. So you say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. You say God is one, and then you say quietly, to a whisper, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto. You say it quietly as a whisper. The Talmud goes on to bring down the parable of this whole thing. The Talmud says, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Debei Rabbi Ami. Brings down from the Beit Midrash, the school of Rabbi Ami. Mashal Levat Melech. It is likened to a daughter of a king. She'ericha tzikei kedea. A daughter of a king, she smelled a delicious pot of food, of meat, and she was smelling like the leftovers in the pot. The shiraim, as we say in Hebrew. Im tomar yesh la ganai. Right? So, im tomar yesh la ganai. Lo tomar yesh la tzar. So what happened basically is that since the fact that the girl, the daughter of the king, she had this desire to have this meat in the pot, the leftovers, which wasn't so. If you say it out loud, my goodness, it's like very, very not fitted at all for the king's daughter to behave that way, right? But if you don't, right, if you don't allow her in any way for her to have the shalab tremendous pain, so what do? Itchilu avdei lavi b'chashai. So what do? Avadeh, I'm sorry. Itchilu avadeh lavi l'chashai. So they began to quietly bring it over. Not going to say it out loud. The king's daughter now has this desire for this meat in the pot. But quietly they brought it over. No one should know about it. It's like they did a little secret mission to appease her. So, which is very, very interesting. So that, in reality, why is the Gemara bringing down this parable of this king's daughter having this desire for meat and having to keep, if you say it out loud, it's going to be embarrassing. You got to keep it very quiet. What does it whole mean? Is something, obviously something very, very special about this expression. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto. Blessed be the name of God's kingdom, right? The honor, the name of God's kingdom forever. So there's something very, very special about that saying. Is that it can't be revealed out loud. But in order to totally understand the picture, I'd like to bring down another midrash, which talks about, gives another reason, right? So if we summarize for a second, what is the reason we don't say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto out loud? That is in order because, again, like we said, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't say it. It's not part of the Torah. So we have to say it quietly. Okay, that's one particular reason brought down by the Talmud. Now, if we look in the Midrash Rabbah, the Midrash Rabbah brings down a fascinating Midrash and brought down in Parashat Vayechi. The Midrash says, "B'shah shalam Moshe lemarom shama lemalachei hasharet, shayu omrim lakadosh baruch hu Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto l'lamed." Moshe Rabbeinu, when he went up to the heavens, he heard the angels saying, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto, blessed be the name of the honor of God's kingdom forever. V'orido tal Yisrael, he brought down that special secret statement to Israel. Why doesn't Israel say it out loud? The Midrash brings out another explanation. What is it likened to? It's likened to someone who stole a beautiful ornament in the palace of a king. He brings it to his wife. But don't put it on in public. Only do this in your home. Interesting. In other words, she has to hide it from the king, because if they catch her with this beautiful ornament, they'll kill her. Or they'll kill him, right? Both of them. So they have to do it quietly, this ornament. So the same thing, it's obviously a parable. Moshe Rabbeinu going up behind the back of the angels, he's hearing this expression and he's bringing it down and saying, Israel, don't say it out loud. The angels should understand it. Say it very quietly. But on Yom Kippur, which is fascinating, Day of Atonement, we are totally clean, all of Israel, like the angels, the serving angels, therefore we say it out loud. On Yom Kippur is the only day of the year we all know. Now we say Shema, we say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Lana. We say it out loud. Of course, there are a lot of questions. I'm not going to go into details. There's a lot of halachic issues here, because it's not the only time we say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Lana. We don't say it only with the Shema. We also say it in other instances when someone, for example, makes a bracha by mistake and doesn't want to say God's name in vain. You mention it, and other things we say as well. I'm not going to go there now, but what I want really to focus on, as we see from these two passages, one from the Talmud and one from the Midrash Rabbah, both ancient sources, is that we see two reasons. It seems like two reasons, right? One is that we want to separate what Jacob said and what Moshe Rabbeinu said. But later on, we see in the Midrash, we see that Moshe Rabbeinu also knew this secret. Right? So we see the reason was really not to let the angels hear it, so it's a different reason. How do we bring it all together really in reality? And I'd like to just, because our time is short, and Shabbat's an early day here today, but I'd like to just think about it as the beautiful words Rashi brings down in the Talmud, just one statement, very, very, one sentence, and Rashi says, what is the end of days? Rashi says, Ketz Yamin in the Talmud, he says, it refers to something else. Ketz Yamin Of course, it's the end of days, but Rashi says it refers also, the meaning of that expression in the Talmud refers to the end of the right end. What does the right end mean? She'yachzir yemino lefanav, she'yishivacho yemino mipnei oyev. Rashi says something very profound. He's saying that Hashem has taken his right hand. Of course, God doesn't have any physical, God forbid to look at God in a physical light, but of course when it says the right hand, it means God's mercy and love. His right hand, which is chesed, love and kindness, is hidden. And we are looking forward in the future where Hashem will turn that around and we will see his love and kindness. Sometimes we don't see his love and kindness out in the open. The beauty of accepting the yoke of heaven. What does it mean to take upon ourselves the yoke of heaven? Accepting upon the yoke of heaven, there's obviously different ways and different angles to approach, but the great lesson that Yaakov wanted from his children, because here he, obviously there was a different reason why he didn't reveal the end of days, and because that's where that, and the divine presence left him. But in reality, it became this whole thing of Kriyat Shema, of taking upon themselves the yoke of heaven. And that, I spoke about, I think a couple of weeks ago, we spoke about that a lot of times we don't understand. We see events that take place in this world, difficult events, very, very trying and troubling events. And it's hard for us to understand why. We don't know the why. We don't know why God does all these things. Accepting the yoke of heaven is accepting the good and the bad. As we spoke about this in the past, Chayav Adam levarech al hatova kemo hara'ah. A person has to bless on the good just like he blesses over the evil. He has to bless over the evil just like he blesses over the good. In other words, if a terrible thing happens, we have to bless. And what does it mean, bless? It's on the same level, realizing that everything from Hashem, everything comes from the creator of the universe, and he knows all the answers and he has all the reasons why things happen. Accepting the yoke of heaven, we are saying, we know, if you look at the Shema Yisrael, what is Shema Yisrael? Listen, hear, O Israel, God, Hashem Elokeinu, God is the four-letter name, the Tetragrammaton, the four-letter name of God. Elokeinu is letter, so what is the four-letter name first? The four-letter name represents mercy. So we're saying the God of mercy is the same God, Elokeinu, which refers to the God of judgment. So a lot of times we see judgment in the world, people right away, they lose faith. They begin to think, God forbid, that there is other forces in the world besides God. There's nothing in this world other than God. There is no other God. No partners to the God of the universe. Well, God created man. In a way, we have a partnership, of course, in Hashem, in creating people, bringing the world, populating the world, doing the commandments. That's a different kind of partnership. Obviously, there's no partnership to God in the world when it comes to being the only one power of the universe that has created us all and who brings us life and sustains us. And everything that happens, God is behind the scenes of everything. And therefore, this important lesson is what Judaism is all about, what the children of Jacob are all about. His 12 children, Jacob was afraid. Maybe one of the children wasn't meant to be part of the family here. But in order to be part of the Jacob family, the family of Yisrael, of Israel, you must have that understanding that everything is from Hashem. Everything that God does is for the best. And even though we may see very, very difficult trials and tribulations, we have to somehow understand, and we will understand in the future, although in this world we may not understand everything. As I spoke about, I told you a couple weeks ago about Job, what the terrible tragedy happened to him. And he didn't understand what's going on, but God revealed him. And he didn't really get an answer of why there's evil in the world. But God shared that with him, just letting him know that God is here. And you always turn to Hashem and have faith in God, and he will strengthen you even if you don't understand what's going on in the world. We can't understand everything, of course. And that beautiful lesson is what Yaakov Avinu, is revealing his two children before he passes away. He's now able to reveal the secret of Baruch Shem Kvod, of the angels. Jacob allowed that message to come to be brought down. It was a secret that said quietly, right? That was something that perhaps we have to keep it. We still continue to keep it quietly. But why? Because the angels themselves, Baruch Shem Kvod Malchut Olam, the angels in the upper worlds, they understand, right? They're in another place. They have a total understanding of the oneness of God and why things happen. But in this world, for a person to say that statement with true conviction, you have to be on an extremely high level. And therefore, I think we can add to it. The modesty of saying that quietly is that quietly, it's also an act of modesty of human beings. Is that such a hard thing to overcome? Being able to say it, you have to really work hard and reach that level of Ol Malchut Shamayim, of taking upon yourself the yoke of heaven, and reaching the level, understand that everything Hashem does is for the good, and His name and His throne we bless forever. That's a powerful thing. On Yom Kippur, by the way, the Day of Atonement, we all say it out loud, because that day we are like in the angels, we're in the upper worlds, and we truly feel that connection of Hashem, that everything is for the best, and we feel that connection, we're all part of the house of Jacob. This concept of understanding the oneness of Hashem and blessing God's throne, at the end of days, the prophet Sfanya, he says, the end of days, all the nations of the world, they were going to come and serve Hashem in the oneness of God. They're all going to return to the oneness of God, believing that there's no one but Hashem in the world. That is going to happen at the end of the day. So this thing of Jacob and the family will reach out to a light to the nations at the end of days, when we will see, when God says, I will afoch el ha'amim, I will turn all nations around with a clear voice to call out in Hashem's name. You should all look in the verse in Tzfanya, chapter 3, verse 9, and as it says in Zechariah, Bayomahu, on that day, Yashem Echad, God will be one and His name will be one. My dear friends, this terrible tragedy took place yesterday, this murder. We're fighting now for the existence of Israel. We're on the battlefield. And going through extremely difficult things, I could tell you, I've been through, for all the many years that we've been living here in Itamar, we've been through terrible, terrible tragedies. What keeps us going is that connection to the land, to Hashem, that He gave us the land as an everlasting inheritance. And we know that there are difficult trials and tribulations. We don't understand why they have to happen, why people have to suffer so much. We have to be steadfast in our faith and say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto L'Olam V'ed. We have to say these words, connect to Hashem, and be strong in our faith. Shabbat Shalom, Besorot Tovot, Yeshurot V'Nechamot.